So we
Perfect.
are going to start right now. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Miss Danielle Kirk. I'm so pleased and honored and delighted to meet you. But before we start, I want to dedicate this interview today and this day to every human being who looks different, feels different, and thinks differently. I see you, I feel you, I am you. Stay different. Our world needs the difference we will make. I read those words this morning, thinking about our meeting today, and felt that I think that one of the most important issues, me and my colleagues, and I think many people that are with us at this moment live, and other that will hear the show later, are dealing with, is the thought or ideation about mental states, illness. And this is such a big honor and pleasure to have you here with us today. Thank you so much for finding the time in this crazy period we live in. Um, so I'll introduce you, and then you can tell more about you,
Sure.
how you got to this great idea of LILI, which is a Live in Light Institute organization. You're the founder, and you established this 2 years ago for the great target, I think, for the great aim that we all thinking about and maybe fantasize about, but you actually came to practice and actually did the thing. And I think that's what differentiates you from many others. But there are others. Danielle, you're 47 years old. You are you did a lot of things in your life. You were a great successful career, and you did many things in different realms of life. And
Mhm.
Lily is a baby of yours.
Yes. Yes.
So tell us a bit more about what Lily's main target, because Lily is an organization dealing with this main issue of destigmatizing mental health conditions, issues, when
Correct.
try to attempt to provide the access for reliable information, and
Correct.
resources for people who are dealing with mental conditions, or parents who have kids who deal with mental conditions, professionals, and
Mhm.
much more. So this is your time, and please tell us more.
Sure. Thank you so much. Really, it's an honor that you're having us today. We were very excited to hear that you're actually having me on the show because this is clearly a huge issue. I have often told people that it's very interesting how HIV/AIDS has been around for less than 50 years, and we've done more to erase the stigma of AIDS and treat AIDS than we have with mental health conditions, which has been around for centuries. So this is Lily's goal. You had mentioned that I've done a lot of different things professionally in my career. I've always been looking for what that is, what my greatest passion is. So I pursued everything with a lot of passion and vigor, saying, okay, this is it, this is it. And it turned out not to be. And in fact, my life purposes, as you will, turned out to be something very personal. I went through a journey of 18 years where I survived 8 near death episodes, 2 traumas, and 6 suicidal depressions. And all along that path, there were major obstacles, from finding the right treatment to actually being able to just simply talk about what I was going through, even with my parents, who are the most loving, amazing people. I always get very emotional when I talk about my parents because they have been through so much with me. And without a doubt, I would not be here alive if it wasn't for my parents. Full stop. So I was very excited when you asked me to be on your show, because this role of parents in a child's life is very, very critical. There's a lot of support through communities and friends and so on and so forth. But because of the stigma, many people, first and foremost, don't want to talk about it if they're not feeling well. And oftentimes, if they're not feeling well, they don't even realize that it's a mental health issue that they're suffering with. There's so much misinformation in the public about mental health conditions, starting, quite frankly, with the word suicide. Suicide infers agency, which means the person actually had control of what they were doing at the time they were doing it. But because of the biochemistry of the brain, I'm sorry?
If I can just emphasize what you're saying, that
Sure.
by using the word, or by the mass communication and all the channels and media using that terminology of suicide, it actually implies and blames the person or his parents or surroundings. And I think that this is a major issue, because I know that many parents who are been through their child suicide,
Yeah.
death from mental illness, and I'm still using that word because it's so much
Yeah.
in the
Sure, of course.
implemented into our language. But many parents that had their son or daughter dead from mental illness actually feel a lot of shame, and they're ashamed. And when I try to understand, like, why do you feel so ashamed, I think now that you give a new perspective about thinking that suicide is actually implies something that a person chose, as if he had
Exactly.
a real choice.
The choice. Exactly. Exactly. Much around the stigma. If we are going to erase the stigma, we have to start talking about mental health conditions differently than we talk about it right now.
Yeah,
Right?
I hear that you use mental health condition as opposed to
Correct.
mental illness. And I think that's the
Correct.
first, right? So that's
Correct.
the
Exactly.
change,
Exactly.
a transformation that you're actually suggesting is, first of all, don't call it a mental illness, and start to relate it as a condition. And I think that it's way, way crucial, because a condition is something that is temporary. It's something that can be, even if it takes a lot of time, it's still
Correct.
an approach that implies that a person can be in a condition or go through a condition and then go out of
Correct.
condition, as opposed to
Correct.
illness, chronic, and it's like
Correct.
you're already like crazy as hell.
Yeah, yeah, in a way. And again, this is what's so important about the use of language. I often make the analogy to diabetes, right? Diabetes is when the pancreas is not working correctly, and therefore the person needs proper medication and lifestyle changes in order to actually process the insulin and digest correctly, because the pancreas is not working correctly. It needs help. Just like diabetes is a condition, mental health issues is a condition that needs to be properly treated through medication, lifestyle changes, and of course, therapy. So there's a lot of different things, and everybody is their own individual. So everybody's treatment is just going to look perhaps a little bit differently. Yeah. So it's not something necessarily that you cure, right? So I talk about my inspiration
Hold on, the
18
connection.
years that I went through. Okay. Um, it chronicles the 18 years that I went through my challenges. And here I am 2 years ago, starting LILI, writing my book, all excited about everything. I finally have this condition under control. I understand how to manage my condition. And I am so proud of myself, because it was a long journey of 18 years. First, of admitting to my parents something was wrong. Second, understanding and learning exactly what was wrong. Then, of course, being the victim of employment discrimination because of the article I published in the Huffington Post. There are so many issues around mental health because the stigma still exists. Yeah. So when we understand it within the correct context and use the correct language, thereby we will erase the stigma. So when I talk about suicide and changing it to he passed or she passed from a mental health condition, you can pass from cancer, you can pass from a stroke, you can pass from diabetes. And just like diabetes, if it's not managed correctly, you can die from a mental health condition. Now, no one, and again, going back to the medical aspect of this, if someone drinks too much and they're completely drunk, we have drunk driving laws
Yeah.
saying if your blood alcohol content is above a certain level, you're not allowed to drive a car. And if you're caught driving the car when your blood alcohol level is above a certain point, you're going to get a ticket.
Yeah.
Full stop. No one anywhere around the globe would expect somebody who's inebriated to drive a car safely. This is the same thing with the biochemistry of the brain, where somebody will pass from a mental health condition. They really are not in control. Now, for somebody who survived 6 suicidal depressions, I can tell you that it is overwhelming. And I can also tell you that the only reason why I'm on the planet was because my parents, all I kept on thinking was about my parents. How could I give my parents so much pain if I checked out? And that was simple. With the earlier depressions, it was easier. Why? Because I'm the granddaughter of Holocaust survivors, right? So my family went through way worse than me. Who am I to take my own life because I'm just feeling bad? What right do I have to do that? And then eventually that didn't matter anymore. And then eventually it didn't matter anymore how much pain I would put my parents through. And that is when I went into inpatient treatment for 10 weeks at the refuge in Ocala, Florida.
You know, Danny, you're talking so openly and so sincerely about your mental states and your history, which is inspiring, you know, and I wish that many people would, go to a stage that they can speak so freely to themselves, you know, not just to the public and, making such a great meaning out of it, but just to themselves and be open with there. And you mentioned that before you went and opened up to your parents, you already understood that you have to. Okay, can you elaborate a bit more on what made you to come to that point when you understand that you have a problem, you have a difficulty, and then all
Sure.
the, because sometimes people would say, you say your parents were the cause for your survival. You know, they helped you to survive just by knowing how much they loved you, appreciated you. And I know that unfortunately, many young people and many teenagers would say that their parents sometimes is the cause for their, suicidal ideation. I'm talking about before,
Yeah.
they still feel it, they depress, and they say that the parents are the cause, not just because always parents are, blame everything on the parents, but unfortunately because sometimes parents with all their great intentions, really, like I believe, and I work with parents for the past 16 years, and I mainly work with parents, and I know that every parent by its nature is wanting what's best for the child, what is best in their eyes. And sometimes the best in their eyes are causing them not to see who the child is and what he really needs. So it comes from best intention, but sometimes cause a lot of distress and a lot of misunderstandings, and then lead some young people, a lot of young people, to mental issues and low self-esteem and low, self faith in themselves and what they can be,
Mhm,
who they are,
mhm,
even
mhm,
because
mhm.
the parents' best intentions to do what's best for them. So,
Sure.
what led you to understand that you have an issue in the first place before you opened up and You know.
Sure. Well, we're going back 20 years now. So it wasn't, I was an adult already. I was a young adult. I was 27. And I had my first trauma. And it was clear, I mean, I couldn't function. I was sexually assaulted. That was my first trauma. And I couldn't function after. And I called my father and I said, I need help. I'm depressed. I did not tell him that I
Right.
was sexually assaulted. I said, I'm not feeling good. I'm having getting up in the morning. I all the time. I'm crying. I can't eat. I don't feel good. I think I'm depressed. And so he came. I was in Chicago, living in Chicago at the time. And he came and we went to a psychiatrist and we got me proper medication. He asked me, do you want to come home to New York? I said, no, I think I can handle this. I think I couldn't. It just got worse and I couldn't keep my job. I couldn't function. I'm a very social person. I'm a huge extrovert. I love meeting new people. I have lots of friends. And all of a sudden, like, I just didn't want to go out. Friends would say, hey, we're going out, come with us. I had no interest. I had no interest in anything. I was just like in bed and
Still haven't
working with a
anyone.
therapist.
And
I'm
still,
sorry?
and that at that point, if I hear you correct, you still haven't told anyone the cause
Correct.
of that condition, right? So
Of
this is
course.
something, and this is something that I maybe also, of course, related to stigma, because many of the sexual assault people, and I'm not talking about women only, because we know that a lot of men, and it's even bigger problem because men are less even recognized, being so sexually assaulted. Uh, face the shame and don't tell anyone, and then the shame of being depressed is even greater because
Correct.
there's a reason in reality to be depressed. It's
Yep.
not
Yep.
depression, not just chemical depression, which is
Correct.
just
There's a
like
trauma.
a
Correct.
trauma.
Correct.
If you're not depressed, something's wrong with you. Okay, so if you're
Correct.
not depressed,
Correct.
so it's we call it a normal reaction to abnormal condition.
Circumstances. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Exactly.
And the stigma still does not provide you with the freedom.
a platform. You can't, I blamed myself. I wasn't careful enough. I wasn't smart enough to see it coming. I should have handled the situation differently. It was all my fault, right? It was all my fault.
We know
And
that.
so there was,
Yeah, I just want to talk about the two different angles, because many of the sexually assaulted or traumatized people are
yeah,
blaming themselves as a defense mechanism of mourning, and we know
yeah,
that is happening. But I think that it's really important to remember it's not only defense mechanism. It's caused by society and the approach to that issue, because it's
correct,
very easy
correct.
to go and say, oh, you blame yourself, because everybody blames themselves in order to feel control. But it's not
Yeah,
just that. Yes, there is that defense mechanism, but it's
yeah,
also not actually, we don't have the availability by society and by, the freedom to not feel blamed or guilty of what happening,
exactly,
because even
exactly.
when you go and at least in Israel, you go and you put complaint in police,
Yeah,
right? They
yeah, yeah,
asking you, what were you wearing, where did
exactly,
you go alone in night, or
exactly. Yeah,
stuff like that. And at that
yeah,
moment the woman say, okay, never mind, it's all on me, and go out
yeah,
and maybe
exactly,
die
exactly,
for the depression. The
exactly.
sun is really hiding your face, so if you can a
I
bit
know. I'm sorry. Could you hold on for one moment? I'm sorry. I need
slightly,
to.
it's really going to light, but yeah, it's
There
great.
we go.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah,
Is that better? Is
yeah,
that better?
yeah.
Hold on. There, that should be better. Yes, I'm sorry about that. The
It's
sun
okay.
is shining.
That's right, right?
Exactly, exactly. You're totally spot on with everything. And there's something that I think it's really important that your viewers know. When I was in inpatient treatment for 10 weeks, we played a game, which was called All My Friends Who. Because a huge issue with mental health is that who the person who's suffering feels very much alone and isolated because no one knows how they're feeling. They feel like, and this is a big issue with children and parents, like parents don't know how they're feeling unless the kid talks about it, right? And oftentimes the kid doesn't want to talk about it because they're so concerned about pleasing the parent and making sure they're a good kid that they don't want to tell their parents that something is wrong or something like this. I was in inpatient treatment and this game was very interesting. We'd all stand in a big circle and one person would go in and they'd say, all my friends whose favorite color is blue. And then anybody whose favorite color was blue was, and so you could see who was with you, right? And then it got more intense. Like anybody who is the child of a single parent who grew up with just a single parent, which has its own challenges. Yeah. And then all those people would go in. And the campus had about 80 people, 40 men and 40 women. So we'd stand in the field and make a huge circle with all of us. Yeah. And it would get all of my friends who have suffered with depression, all of my friends who have anxiety that or have an issue with alcohol and so on and so forth. There was a lady, she was 82 years old. And she stood in that circle and said, all my friends who've been raped. And every single patient walked in. All 40 men and all 40 women. And we all started crying. Because most of the men hadn't even admitted it to anybody ever in their life. And then they wonder why they're having such an issue with alcohol or drugs or gambling or something. And it was at that moment that I said, I have to do something about this. There are way too many people suffering and suffering in the dark. It's one thing to suffer with cancer and be in the hospital and everybody comes and sees you and dotes on you and makes sure you're comfortable and there's a lot of sympathy and compassion.
Yeah.
It's another thing to be ill with depression or trauma or alcoholism. 12-step programs are still anonymous. Talk about somebody in your AA meeting because of the stigma. This penetrates so many different areas of our life, and we don't even know it because we are still in the throes of stigma. And like I said, 2 years ago, when I said, I'm done, I have a full handle on this condition. I haven't suffered in a long time. This is great. I'm going to start LILI. Then COVID hit. Then I'm stuck in my New York City apartment in the height of the crisis. And the only interaction I have is with people over Zoom. I never forget at the end of April telling my friend, I haven't had a hug since March 8th. And I got depressed again.
Of course.
And I couldn't access the usual tools I have to manage my condition because I'm stuck in my apartment. And by the way, I have a beautiful apartment overlooking the East River by the United Nations. I'm not sitting in a little apartment somewhere up in a bad neighborhood or something. And I could just imagine what those people were going through. And here I fell into the worst depression I've ever had in all the 20 years I've been dealing with this, the worst. And I've made certain lifestyle changes to ensure that never happens again. With that being said, we don't know. And as I mentioned, there is no cure. It's a condition that needs to be managed.
But I think that what the difference, the greater difference is that you recognized that you haven't had a hug, and you begin an
Yeah.
episode, and you knew that
Yeah.
what causing it, you can identify
Yeah.
it quickly, and then readjust, the conditions which were in your control, rather than not,
Correct.
and adjust. And that's what I guess what you mean by being control of the state of the issue.
Correct.
It's pure, but with all, it's you compare it to diabetes. I compare it sometimes to sight, the glasses. Like, I know that when I don't see, and when I begin to deteriorate, right, so I need to go and adjust my life.
Exactly.
I have to readjust my glasses, and I have to readjust the light, and do everything
Exactly.
that isn't in my hand once I realize what's happening to me. But in order to do that, I have to be, okay with what's happening. Okay. And
Correct.
I think that
Correct.
one of the big missions that Lily, I'm repeating the Living Light Institute, because people
Yes.
search and Google, it's all repeated every time. So Living Light Institute that you established is aimed to, right? So people to get, it's okay not to be okay all the time.
Exactly.
There is help
Exactly.
to be access for, because I think that one of the big problems sometimes that I encounter with my patients that I meet is that the first thing a person do in our 2020 a
Yeah.
lifetime, especially during COVID, but even before, is go to Google. And when they Google, I'm depressed for 2 and 3 weeks and stuff like that, the first thing they get is not reliable resources. What they get is forums of other people who are putting a lot of stress. It's the aim of the forum groups and group support is really important, to
Yeah.
normalize and to make people
Yeah.
feel not alone. But the fact, what I found, for 15 years of my work with patients with anxieties and major OCD and depression patients mainly, is that they're not comforted by that forums. They often
Correct.
get a lot of
Overwhelmed.
information which is not related to them in any way, and then they go
Correct.
and stress
Correct.
more, and not comforted as they were supposed to be, because that was
Correct.
the initial goal, right? And then I think that the reliable resources are really needed to be provided,
Correct.
and
Correct.
the people, without making them feel there something's wrong with them, or they're really like odd,
Correct.
because that Facebook is pushing us all that stuff that makes us feel weird. Like, why do they food fungus or stuff like that? Like, why do you push it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
see a lot of pushing of mental
Yeah.
mental issues resources. And
Exactly.
the- you were talking about the great and the meaningful role of your parents through the years. Can you tell us
Yeah.
a bit more what was so helpful, the way you grew up, and how your parents were so helpful, that you, in age of 47, are so grateful to them? Because I think that many parents want to hear their child being
Sure.
so grateful to them at that age.
There's there's something um there's something that I think is important um in the context of parental health. Um First and foremost, in my home environment growing up, my parents are very open people. So anything that was bothering us, they'd always say, anything bothers you, come to us. Anything that come to us. But look, I was the kid with the cooties in second grade. I was bullied, but I didn't want to tell my parents because I was ashamed. No one wanted to be my friend. And then I heard from a kid next door that if you have the cooties, then your parents will give you up for adoption. And there was all these things. And so it was a whole thing. And I was scared. And then eventually when it came out, what was happening, my parents said, you are our greatest gift. No one, we are never, never, ever going to give you up, ever. Like, you're the greatest gift we were ever given. And they were constantly growing up saying, we're here for you. How are you feeling? They've always been like, how was your day? They were involved with my life. Yeah. And so, like, I would, even as an adult, if I'm on the phone with my mom and I sneeze, honey, you're getting a cold, go to the doctor. I'm like, Mom, I feel fine. I just sneezed. It's like not a big deal. Right. And it was this type of a thing where it was always open. There was always open dialogue, and if anything bothered you, just go to my parents and say, look, this is really, I'm not feeling well because of this, or whatever it is. They always provided for open dialogue about everything, and especially about our feelings. Okay, so I would come home and I would be upset because I didn't do well on a test. Why are you upset? I didn't do well on my test. Okay, tell me about it. Like, why are you upset knowing that you'll do better on another test? And we would talk about things. So it really created an environment where I felt safe. And that is the key word. You need to make your kids feel safe enough to talk to you about whatever it is that's going on. Now, fast forward, I'm in inpatient treatment. There was a man there that was suffering with suicidal depression and had drug issues as well. And we had family week, I'm sorry, and where the families would come and parents would come and spouses, and to learn about what their loved one is going through. And this person, his parents didn't come. And he was 45 and he wasn't married. He had no kids. He had nobody. And his parents, not even one, nobody from his family came. He was all by himself. And I said, you'll be with us for the weekend. Don't worry. I'm like, listen, I said, I come from a crazy Jewish family in New York. Hope you don't mind. We're good people. Exactly. And we kind of like adopted him in. And I was really concerned about him because he didn't have any support when he left. He had no friends, good friends coming, and he would intellectualize everything. And in fact, he didn't make it. A few months after treatment, he passed. But then on the opposite side of the same coin, my dearest, closest friend in treatment, who was really like my little brother. He called me his big sister. I called him my little brother. We were like very connected spiritually. The most beautiful, beautiful spirit. He passed 2 months after we left rehab. And he couldn't have a more supportive mother and family life and everything, the most loving, caring family ever. And he still passed. So there's no like exact equation to who's going to make it and who's not. Yeah. So it's parents.
It's really meaningful that you mention it, because also the parents are blaming themselves a lot of time. But I think that if we're not taking the really extreme side of the spectrum, because the spectrum of mental conditions is really, really broad, and I'm thinking about how parents are influencing the self-esteem and the way that the child will perceive what's happening in life, and even the open communication and freedom to go and speak about the problems, which can maybe hopefully prevent the start a lot of things that can be prevented. I'm not talking about the extreme, because I think that in the extreme cases there are a lot of factors are interacting there, and we cannot really say, there are a lot of different cases, and as you showed, the opposite of two, and the two stories are really sad, and they're way too different stories. And sometimes that a person have a very loving family, but the way he feels and experience them is really different than somebody who I'll say from the outer perspective. Oh, how can she live with that mother? And you'll say, oh, she's the most important and most helpful person in the world, right? So it's really the perception of our loved ones is what affects us. So I think it's really differentiated, and every case is way unique and different.
That's true. But with this particular case, he told me while we were in inpatient, and I want to clarify this. He said to me, Danny, being with you, it's like being with my mom. And I'm like, oh, is that a good thing or a bad thing? He goes, no, Danny, my mom is the most amazing woman I've ever known in my life.
Oh,
and in fact,
yeah,
it's right. So it wasn't like that misperception where they were so supportive and like he didn't feel it that way. Yeah. No, she's a phenomenal woman. Yeah, exactly.
I think your correction is at place, and it's really important to note it's really different from case to case. That's why I said there are also cases that the reason I said is because many of close friends who have a person who they see is in a bad condition, they perceive the friends, right? They perceive the parents as very loving and supportive, might misperceive it because the person next to them might feel different. That's why I say it. So we have to notice, to, being stigma, the stigma, it goes all the ways, in my view, right? So that we can stigmatize the negative conditions, but we also sometimes stigmatize positive conditions.
So here's the interesting thing. Children learn what they live. Okay. So unfortunately, the number one cause of death for youngsters ages 10 to 24 is death from a mental health condition. With that being said, I know many kids talk to me about this because when I tell them about LILI, they're like, wow, that's so important. My friend died 3 months ago, what have you. Now, here's the interesting thing. Parents will learn about a death by mental health condition in the child's grade or at camp or whatever. And many times, the parent's reaction in front of the children is, what a selfish thing to do.
Yeah, exactly.
To cause such pain to the parents. What a selfish thing to do. If the kid isn't feeling good, why is he or she going to talk to mom and dad when this is a selfish thing to do? Again, children, regardless of what's going on, are always seeking parental approval.
Always.
So, and we don't, but that's the thing. The parents don't mean to do it because of the stigma due to the lack of education, instead of having a compassionate reaction, right? Because if the same friend in school or camp came down with cancer, it was, oh, let's go see him. Let's go comfort if the friend passed from cancer or something else, there would be an outpouring of support and love and care. But
so
when
saying it's a selfish thing to do, if parents just would say, oh my God, what must have happened to that child that he was so suffering, that would
it's not what happened, because then it becomes a whole hypothetical thing, and without the education, it can lead into all sorts of misinformation, and it will actually perpetuate the stigma. So if it's a simple, whoa, what horrible news, let's go, I mean, in Israel, clearly, let's go to the funeral, let's go pay a shiva call, this is so horrible, and just have the same reaction that you have learning about a kid's friend passing from cancer or something else. The child has passed away. That's what we focus on. Because if the child passed from cancer, you would ask, oh, what happened? Why did the kid get cancer? Blah, blah, blah. Those details wouldn't matter. The child had cancer.
Yeah.
The child passed away from cancer. Whoa.
You know
The
that
day will come, hold on. The day will come when LILI's mission is fulfilled, that when a child passes from a mental health condition, the parent will say, oh my God, let's go support the family. Instead of what happened, what caused it, and all of these probing questions that perpetuate the stigma.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Amen to that. You know that the one of the things that it causes, I know in many cases, the the anxiety and the panic, being around mental condition people, or somebody who's dealing with stress or anxiety or depression, is something that many people think it's contagious. That's something that people think if they be around that person and support him, he might be contagious, and they get depressed as well. And I think that's that's one of the biggest misconceptions, and one of the unconscious defense mechanism that we have, thinking that we cannot see. It's something like a postpartum depression that
Yeah.
woman goes through, and the husband in many cases is trying to pull her out of it, like
Yeah.
oh, come on, you should be happy,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
have that.
Yeah.
How can you be so sad? And he pulls like too fast, too early, too much too soon. And she feels really bad about being in that condition, right? But the husband, in many cases, the real reason he does that is because he's afraid that he'll be into it with her. It's either we're both in the dark, or we
Yeah.
both in the light, and that might cause additional blame and additional
Yeah.
stress, which is not right. And I
Yeah.
think that one of the great missions that LILI has is providing the information for loved ones, and for those that they can feel safe to support and to provide the best support to each condition they dealing with that lives around them or so. I think that you were mentioning that moment when you decided something has to be done. And I think that's a crucial moment. And you, a couple minutes before, you talked about that minute that you saw that circles, and you decided that something has to be done while you were inpatient patient, right? So,
Yeah.
so from there, can you tell us a bit about the journey from there to what it is?
Here.
Really,
Oof.
birth
It
of
was, wow. It was,
here.
yeah, yeah. It was, it happened actually exactly 5 years ago this month that that circle happened. And I said, I have to get better, and I have to figure out a way of how to help all these people that are in the dark. And I'm going to get better. And this is what I'm doing. And it's going to be a long road. But 25% of the world's population will suffer with a mental health episode in their lifetime. Now, that's 25% that are actually directly affected, but they have family members, friends, colleagues around them. And indirectly, those people get affected as well, right? Whether it's lost production at work, or a spouse that, is not holding their own in the household, whatever it is. So if you think about it, every human being on the planet has been affected by mental health, full stop. And nobody anywhere, and I've been looking, because I said to myself, there's got to be some sort of organization where I can Google, I live in New York City and I feel depressed. Where do I go? And when you do that now, you get overwhelmed with a bunch of information. You don't know who's qualified, who's not. It took me 2 months with the help of my parents to find an inpatient treatment center. Why? Because there are many, many, many rehab centers that simply are, they rent out a mansion in Florida, right? They pay rent, $20,000 a month rent. There's 8 bedrooms. They hire a doctor and a nurse, and they call themselves a rehab center. And people go because they're so desperate to get treated, and they don't know where to go. And they're usually doing it quietly around no one, trying to find it on the internet. And they wind up going to this place that cost, the 50,000, whatever it costs. Many health insurance company don't even cover inpatient treatment programs. I mean, there's so many issues around all of this. And so when I was released from rehab, and I started going on my path, I said, I need to understand what it is to run an organization, because I've always been very philanthropic to raise money for different causes like Magen David Adom, right? But I never knew what it was to actually work inside an organization. So through various, very coincidental, though there are no coincidences, circumstances, I wound up becoming the chief development officer for Usher's New Look. Usher is a singer in the States. He's very popular.
Yeah.
And he had an organization to help children graduate from high school in the in the low income areas. And it was in there that I worked there for a year to understand how an organization works. So I did that for a year to understand. And then I went and started working on LILI. And all through that, there was adjustments back into the real world and all of these. There's so much. How does someone that suffers with a mental health condition and has a history of mental health issues, how do you now function in the real world as a healthy person? What tools do you implement to operate in the real world and not have a triggering event cause me to go into another depression? I mean, these were the massive issues that I was dealing with coming out of inpatient treatment. And your profession, thank God you guys exist. You have saved so many lives. But it's one thing to sit in your therapist's office and talk about something. And then it's a whole other thing to be in a situation in the real world dealing with something and not having your therapist right there next to you, helping you through whatever you need help with. Yeah. So it was definitely a process through this whole thing. I learned so much about what this whole thing means. And I lived through so much of it. As I mentioned, I wrote the article in the Huffington Post, and unfortunately I couldn't launch back in the summer of 2017 due to financial issues. And then I went back into real estate while working on LILI on the side. And I have a phenomenal track record in real estate. And the sales director introduced me to the developer saying, I worked with her. She's amazing. I've never seen a closer like this. And the developer said, wonderful, we met, everything was great. This was on a Thursday. He said, when can you start? I said, tomorrow. He's like, why don't you take the weekend? We'll start on Monday. Great, we'll get you the contract. Great. Sunday comes, we are so sorry. We have reanalyzed and reconsidered our hiring timeline. And unfortunately, we can't go through with this position at this time. I talked to the sales director. She said, Danny, you've got to get that article off the internet. She said, he called me and said, I can't hire her. And I said, why? And he said, because of this article. She said, Danny, if you want a future in real estate, you must remove that article. And instead of it discouraging me, it actually motivated me even more to get this done. Because all of a sudden, despite my amazing track record in real estate, this guy would not hire me because I was a liability. What happens if she wakes up one morning, she's too depressed to come to work? She's a liability. I can't hire her, is what he told the sales director. I mean, and it's one thing after another that has led to this juncture in my life. Now, it's interesting because I say to people, you know, you look up at the sky and you don't think it's blue, and you don't believe it's blue, and you don't hope it's blue. You know it's blue. With everything I've been through, I know I was put on the planet to do this.
Thank God for that. Not for everything you went through, but I think that, you know, that if people are going to suffer, if unfortunately they encounter that and then they manage, and I think that your family, what they did in so many ways is provide you with that strength to take the suffering and making something healthy for
From
others,
it.
for you and others for it. And I think this is the basis that they, in some way or another, provided you maybe not even realizing it, because not everybody is finding that aim and doing something so good from a dark situation. So first of all, thank you for that. But I can't help it because my ADHD is
Yeah,
making me turn my attention to
sure.
the wall behind you with that straight
Uh,
lot of pictures. And I can help if can you tell me a bit more, or is it not for
Of
the
course, no, it's fine. It's fine. I'm in my home office. It's fine. First, I just wanted to address something. You know, you said, I'm so sorry you went through everything. Every morning I wake up, I'm grateful. I'm grateful. All those 18 years of suffering was boot camp, and it has equipped me with everything I need to make sure LILI accomplishes her mission. So this is my why board.
wow?
This comes from, and it's interesting that you asked me about from the moment of leaving rehab to now. It starts with a note that was left for me right before I went into inpatient treatment. I was at a little cafe tucked in the corner outside, crying and talking to my best friend and telling her, I don't think I'm going to survive this, so on and so forth. And a waiter dropped a note and said, I'm sorry for eavesdropping, but I couldn't help but overhear your conversation. And I want to let you know, you're not alone. And it starts with that note, and then it continues through the 5 years since I left rehab, with everything that has happened and all of my adventures, from being with Usher at the mayor's ball in Atlanta, to publishing an article about my soul brother's mom, the amazing lady who I told you about,
I read the article. It was
to my mentor, to my mentor for real estate, who recognizes how talented I am in real estate, but that I choose to do this. And he's so proud of me. And all of the people along the way that have brought me here, that I have helped or guided, who have written me beautiful texts and emails and notes saying thank you because you're such an inspiration.
you are.
So whenever I still have so much concern and pain, and that's why I get so emotional, because I was in the dark for so long, and there are so many people in the dark. And I devote the rest of my life to this, and I know that
this is like my why, right? Because then I have my vision board in front of me on my desk with everything that's ahead for LILI. And then I have the why back here. So when the vision can get a little overwhelming, I mean, there's a lot of work to be done, I just turn around and remember all the people that I've helped thus far without even having LILI up and running with the offices and everything that we need in order to move forward, because unfortunately we were delayed because of COVID. So
it's inspiring, and it's so much important, and I think it's important on many levels and different languages in different countries. And so tell me, how can we help? So we're the professionals or people that are hearing us and want to contribute or help in order to get this LILI mission forward in our country. Countries, how can we help? How can we take part? How can we reach you? So you, after the recording, the live show, you can leave the details in the comment, write down so people can contact
sure.
you. Yeah, so
Sure.
that
It's actually, everyone can contact me. It's really easy through our website, which is still under construction, but they can reach me through that, which is liliglobal.org, LILIGLOBAL.org.
yeah, you
And
will leave,
there's a
you will leave it written as a link in a comment afterwards, and everybody can also reach me, and I'll give them directly and much more. When is your book coming out?
hopefully next year in 2020.
20,
Hopefully. I'm sorry?
2021.
2021. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Hopefully. We
and
will,
I
it's
give a lot of inspiration, not just by doing that things, but also for coming out and talking freely and openly. And I think that this way more contributing than any professional speaking about theories and what's happening and statistics. Hearing a person that been in the dark and is here with us now, healthy and strong and controlling, and knowing that he can be in a bad situation, but he can knows what to do with it, and making a good cause out of it. It's way more inspiring than any lecture or professional or doctor talking about it, with all due respect. And I hope it will give an inspiration for more people to talk about their conditions, knowing that it's okay, and being, taking a lot of strength and making good out of bad. Going from, as you said in your preface to your book, from darkness to light, from shame to honor, or I don't remember the exact word, but you're good with terminology better than I. I think you
from
do.
shame. It's from shame to love.
From shame to love. And I think you're doing such a wonderful thing that is already helping many people, I know, and will continue to help. And anything that we can do to contribute, I'll be happy to. And I know a lot of my colleagues are interested as well. And we can, together, I think we all can do much more. And we learned a lot. Thank you so much for being you, for being here, for surviving, and keep on surviving each time, and helping so many people. It's a great pleasure, great honor. I'm honored that you had that contributed your time to speak with me and to us. And thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Everybody can reach me through the website. Any questions, any guidance, I'm happy to do it until we have our website up and running where it needs to be, so that one day, whoever it is, wherever you are, can simply go on the internet and Google it, and the LILI website will come up and have the direct guide.
Translate to Hebrew, it's on me. That's
fantastic. That's exactly what we need. Thank you. Have a great day. Thank you so much for your time, Anat.
Have a great day. Thank you for your time. Bye-bye.